Okay, we're good.
All right. So my name is Mike Shirley. I'm with Frontier Technology, and we're going to talk a little bit today about the Small Business Innovation Research Program. We're going to walk you through the three different phases of the program, how folks use the program, how FTI has worked with this, and again, it's an opportunity for a lot of different companies to get involved in this program that has been very successful in terms of getting some new capabilities out in front of a lot of different government customers. And so we'll walk through some of those things today. So our purpose is we're going to give a little bit of overview of Frontier Technology. We're going to talk about I'll call it the SBIR program, or Small Business Innovation Research Program. What FTI kind of the thrust of what we do is a lot of program management, data analytics, data fusion kind of things. And we'll talk a little bit about our technologies, but not much. But you'll get the gist of how some of these things were maybe for one customer, and then they evolve through a phase one of SBIRs, then a phase two, and then you'll see some of our phase threes. And we like to quote General Brown in this quote, because a lot of what you're going to hear is about speed, flexibility. And again, with that said, that's what the general's getting at when he says accelerate, change, or lose. Change is critical and speed is paramount. And so in the past, sometimes for people to get something on contract, it might take 18 months. Well, you'll see in a little bit, ours tends to take weeks to a month or two instead of 18 months to 2 years. So FTI is a small business in terms of headcount. So if the NAICS code is counting 500 or less or 1,000 or less, we're a small business. On the revenue things, we're not. But we have been a small business. We've been in business for 35 years and have grown through some of those limits, but have been, I think, a good industry partner as we've done that. We're in a few dozen states around the country. So we're headquarters in Dayton, Ohio. I happen to sit outside of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, but you'll see that we support the Air Force, Army, Navy, Marines, and Space Force. So a pretty broad set of things that we do in the Small Business Innovation Research Program. This slide, we like to talk to in terms of this is where a lot of people begin with the program. They have never heard of the SBIR program. So there's some seed money that the Small Business Administration puts out through the 11 agencies, which it's really in their own budgets, but SBA administers the program, where they can invest in technologies, and it might be somebody building a widget in a garage, and it might be an idea or a concept, and that's phase one. So some SBIR dollars, usually small amounts, 50 to 150K, depending on the service or the agency, and they are paid to go compete for that. And then if they win it, they're not paid to compete. They're paid if they win, and then they can develop that concept. A subset of the phase one efforts become phase twos. The government likes what they hear or see. You may have 3 or 4 different phase one winners, and then they want a one or more phase two winners to flesh out and to mature that capability. That tends to be a bit more dollars, around 750K to 1.5 million. And usually there's a prototype or demonstration. A lot of times that's where some of those technology ends. The SBIR phase 3 is really the opposite of 1 and 2. And SBIR phase 3 is what we're going to talk about mainly today. And that is work that derives from, extends, or completes a phase 1 or 2 effort. Unlike the phase 1s and 2s, the phase 3s tend to be sole source. And unlike the 1s or 2s, instead of using the SBIR dollars from the SBIR program, now any other federal dollars or commercial dollars can be used. The only funds that can't be used in a for a phase three are the SBIR dollars. Those were the seed monies for the 1 and 2. And then these are 3 of the guides that the services put out in order for their program managers and contracting officers to learn about how to do a phase 3 SBIR, because a lot of folks in the acquisition community just haven't been exposed, or the only thing they've been exposed to are 1s and 2s, and these guides are specifically for phase 3s. The next slide kind of shows that we are looking at this through the Small Business Administration. So again, this is who owns the program. And when I say derives from, extends, or completes, what does that mean? So the SBA put out guidance. Derives from means that the requirement or contract has its origin or traces to previous SBIR efforts of a SBIR firm. And extends means that the requirement or contract applies or advances the prior SBIR efforts to a different application or uses the SBIR efforts in a new way. Those are the 2 main things that are done. Now, sometimes it can be completed. FTI does it from a services perspective. So we're not building a widget. We're not building a new lens for the Predator that the Air Force may use. We're instead building things for life cycle cost analysis, data fusion, those kind of things. So more.
Would you repeat that?
Yes, that probably 90% of the SBIR world, phase 1s and 2s, support hardware or software. They're really not services oriented. They're making a new lens for a Predator. They're making the armor harder for an MRAP vehicle, things like that. You're going to see as we walk through this, FTI chose a different path, and ours is much more services based, analytics based, data fusion based, not a widget that would go on a weapon system. So we tend not to complete our efforts. We tend to keep expanding them. Somebody else may complete the effort, meaning that they take this product, it's an idea or a concept in a phase 1. In phase 2, it's a prototype, and then it's completed when they put that new lens on a Predator as a piece of hardware working with General Atomics or whoever the manufacturer of the entire system is. And on this slide, we kind of talk about FTI a bit in terms of, again, the decision analysis, program management, data fusion. Through this, we've been a player in the SBIR community for a long time, and we've won over 160 phase 1s and 2s. You can bid and compete for 1s and 2s until you reach 500 people. So those are small business set-asides. You'll see in a second, phase 3s do not have to be small business set-asides. You could be a 5,000 person company making $2 billion a year and still do SBIR phase 3 because of the intellectual property that is owned through the SBIR program.
So Mike, is FTI intentionally trying to stay small?
Not at all. That we have 160 plus phase 1s and 2s. We now have 37 phase 3s. We're still bidding and winning phase 1s and 2s, but that window will close probably within the next 12 months. We'll go over 500. That's fine. Our phase 1s and 2s are so broad and have been so effective that we're winning new phase 3s at a pretty rapid rate. Probably even from the last time I talked to you, we probably added about 7 more. We're in the process of adding 2 more with the Army as I speak. And so we'll be over 40, hopefully by the May timeframe.
Gotcha.
We have a lot of technologies that really help decision makers with cost, schedule, performance. When I talk about a lens on a Predator, that's a very narrow market, right? That you're looking to support. When I talk about cost, schedule, performance, there's lots of people that need help with the data analytics and putting the information in a way that they can make better decisions. So that's where some of the difference is. That's where, our technologies didn't stop at, phase 2. They carried on because there was an application out there with other people's money other than the SBIR money. And then what's nice too, kind of a twofer, as you're getting the technologies and the capabilities to help you, the acquisition, as I mentioned before, is in units of weeks to months, not years. And we tend to be a service provider sitting with the government, or we work offsite and have reach back capability on the services side. That might be for a matter of months, it might be longer. And again, we team very well. So we're able to bring in those experts no matter where they sit. And the areas of expertise we have on this slide kind of points to that we help with the whole life cycle solution of a program or system. And it might be readiness they care about, it might be testing, integration, fielding, or it might be cyber resiliency in some of those areas. So it's a pretty broad aspect. The key to the success has really been our cyber technologies. And that is when you look at this and you start from the left and think of the strategic life cycle of any program or solution, and then you move to the right and go, okay, somebody might need decision analysis help, program management help, logistics help, big data analytics, or prognostic health management. Then you start to narrow to some of our tool sets. And today we're not going to go over their capabilities, but as companies are thinking about bidding efforts in the cyber world with the government, and they look at this and go, well, I have some capability in these areas. What I recommend is look at those 11 federal agencies. And if you go to the SBA website, they'll point you to those. And then they put out their topics for you to bid on the phase ones of those efforts. And again, you can sell your wares there, your concepts, and again, you can start this path into the cyber world. So we have, again, gone past the cyber 1-2 stage into the phase 3. And in phase 3, we have found we help customers, government customers, throughout this entire process, from the research and development stage through design, prototype, test and evaluation, fielding, modifying, and sustaining a program or system. The models and the tools are on the left-hand side. Again, we're not going to go into great detail. Some of the words that are on there describe basically what they do. But the ones at the bottom need data to be used. So our metrics progress analysis engine takes data from any source and looks at the metrics that the customer is interested in. We may even help the customer look at different metrics than what they normally are doing to see, hey, you might want to look at this as a leading indicator or things like that. And then they data analytics and R squares and all those good things to look for correlation between the government's actions and their decision points and their investments and what outcomes they're trying to get, and to see if those outcomes are happening. You know, are these actions producing positive results, negative results, or having no effect at all? So when we have our tools that need data, those are the ones that tend to be generated in the prototype phase. And we do everything from looking at marine paper copy training records and converting those into digital, then analyzing those, to taking very classified data off of satellites. And in one instance, that used to be about a 22-hour process that now, through some of these technology, gets it from the satellite to some decision makers in 8 minutes. You could understand why that may be useful to some of our customers. Let me stop there and see if there are any questions that might be tickling your.
So yeah, as I said earlier, what I'm wanting to do is what Rick and I are doing is we're tasked with trying to assess our existing base of clients and try to find the best matches to where we can say, okay, come to the lunch and learn and listen, or we need to introduce you. So one of the questions I've got, and you may be about to cover that, but where are you finding some of the best teams? How are you teaming up with, not how, why are you teaming up with someone, and what are you finding when that happens? What's causing that teaming?
Right. So that is a great question to have this slide up on.
Okay.
And, what this does is aligns our technologies with the customer bases and the technologies that were used to support these customer bases. So how we team is we look for companies that have complementary capability or that the government is trying to get to and they don't have a way to make that happen. And this can be all the way down to that 1099, that independent consultant, all the way to a small business of 300, 400 people, all the way up to a 5,000 person company. We've had Raytheon, Lockheed, Boeing, Booz Allen, Deloitte, all as subcontractors to us, that there were complementary capabilities that have been able to come together and been put on our phase threes. And as you look at these things, the tools is one aspect of it and the technologies, but then you kind of go with, well, so what? You've got these tools, what do they do? So what tends to happen is on this slide, customers, what I call find themselves. They look at this and go, yeah, my current contract really is not getting me the subject matter experts that I need. I needed cleared scrum masters to help with the B2 bomber. And so FTI and your teammates, can you help us do that? And then as you go down this list, you'll see the kind of area that the customer had a need in. And then you'll see the customers in brackets, the light attack aircraft, the Joint Strike Fighter, Space Force, the Navy, all these kind of different areas, Defense Health Agency. And so companies can look at this and go, oh, I do some logistics things. I do program readiness or program management. I am involved with metrics with my customer. So yeah, it might be worthwhile then to sit down and have a discussion. And then what we do quite often is we do co-marketing with our teaming partners. They may have a better relationship with a government customer than we do. We may have never even met them, but they go, wow, this is pretty interesting. Your technologies are useful. Your contracting solution is useful. How about we team together, do what I call co-marketing. We go in the same room, or in this world, the same virtual room, and we sit down with the government customer that has the problem and the money. And then we talk about how ourselves and our teaming partner may be able to provide a combined solution through this vehicle. So that's where it tends to happen when, and it really shows itself in the last quarter of the fiscal year. So in the last quarter of the fiscal year, as most of us in government contracting know, people are trying to put money on contract, but they may not have a contract vehicle in place. So as I said, we have 37 phase threes. And as we come together with industry partners and go, well, we actually have a contract vehicle with that customer. Why don't we chat and see if there's a fit in scope? We've been able to put, for example, between July, August, and September of a given year, over $80 million on contract in that short period of time because of how rapid these things happen. So, those teaming partners, we meet at industry days, we meet through introductions, we meet because a customer may go, hey, Mike, what you guys are saying, I need some of, but can you bring on company X, Y, or Z? Because I also need what they are bringing to the table. And we're happy to make those teaming arrangements. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Super. So slide 10 is kind of an important slide. In October of 20, for anybody out there, if you go to the SBA website, in October of 20, the Small Business Administration rewrote their directive on the SBIR program. And so these are the highlights of that directive. And we also have a white paper that's a 2-page summary of that document. And then it has 8 pages of reference. Happy to send that out. I think you and your team have that as part of the documents that I've sent before, but I'm happy to send it again. The first part of this really is program focus. So program managers tend to get interested in the top half of this chart, where very broad scope of work can be done, products, services, R&D, all those things. And then unlike many contracts, both services and materials can be acquired on a phase 3. That's not always done in contracts. And then, as I mentioned before, any teammates. I kind of was talking about commercial teammates, small businesses, large things like that. But the other thing that's nice is sometimes customers want to get to a university or a federally funded research and development center. And we're able to do that and make those teaming partners. And then again, any funds, including foreign military sales funds, can be done on these. And any federal agency, even if they're not one of the 11 that have a small business small business innovation research program, they can still, their contracting team can still put a phase 3 in place, even though they don't have that program. It's open to all federal agencies. And then any security level, we have some that are TS, SCI, SAP, SAR. Now, the second part of this chart really gets focused on the contracting team, usually, that we're sitting across the table talking from. And in this case, where they're sole source, because of the intellectual property, we're able to do direct discussions with the government. So for one, all contracting options are available on the SBIR phase 3. There's no limit to the number of, the duration, the type, or the value, or the value of phase 3. We have a phase 3 that's $400 million of ceiling. We have a basic ordering agreement that has unlimited ceiling. All the ceiling is done at the delivery order level. There's no time limit in the time that elapses between when a company wins a phase 1 or 2 and when they put a phase 3 in place. And because the phase 1 and 2s were competed, the contracting team is going to get competition credit for the SBIR phase 3, even though it's sole source. So almost a decade ago, the Congress was looking and going, hey, there's just not much use of these SBIR technologies. Let's move out of the way the barriers of contracting. So that's part of what they did. They said, you know, they're being called sole source, so contracting officers don't want to do it because they don't get competition credit. Well, now they do. So now contracting teams get competition credit for phase 3s because of the competition on phase 1s and 2s. And again, most of those are sole source direct awards. The size limits, one of your questions earlier, that 500 FTE count size limit does not apply to a SBIR phase 3. And they can get small business credit for a phase 3 when they do business with FTI and not have to make it a small business set aside. And the way they do that is if you use NAICS code 541715, that covers up to 1,000 people, sometimes even more with exceptions. And so then you don't have to worry about that 51% work share, because sometimes the optimum team, it might be a third, ourselves and 2 teaming partners. And so we've done that many times where we're still using the technologies, but we're bringing on these 2 teammates that the government needs. And we're trying to get the government the optimum solution. They can make SBIR phase 3 small business set-asides. They don't have to. Many times the companies that have the SBIR phase 3s are bigger than 500, just like our discussion earlier. And so these are some of our SBIR phase 3s. They happen to be highlighted in green because we were talking with an Army customer. And so we were highlighting some of the Army things that we have done. But you can see on this that basic ordering agreements, IDIQs, direct awards, and for all different services, including some other agency we've done. And we've even done one on an OTA. And I've got an example of a phase 3 that really covers the life cycle of a program or system. And again, any color of money, any ceiling can be supported. And if you look through these objectives, from program management to studies and analysis to technology insertion to operational implementation and monitoring, what it covers is the entire life cycle of a program or system. Now, overlay FTI's tools that you saw on the slides previously, where we have a set of technologies that support each phase. And what customers find is this can become a really good relief valve. It may not be to support their main effort, and their main contracting situation may be great, but those hard to do things, sometimes it takes, for example, longer to get a study on contract than it does to do the study. So wouldn't a customer like having an umbrella vehicle that they can get some of their studies done, their technology insertion, their testing done, and put it on contract in a matter of days, having this in place rather than an 18-month to 2-year acquisition process. Let me stop there and see what questions you may have.
Rick, what about you?
I've got a question. All right, so I'm a small business, and I'm looking to see what's in it for me when the possibility of working with FTI. And,
Well, go ahead.
So, as I understand it, you reach out to the government agencies, and you're looking for opportunities, needs that they have. And so I would assume that you're going to look through the different phase 3s that you've got available. And let's say that you have staff on hand and it fits one of your phase 3s. Well, you're going to go ahead and you're going to do it with your existing staff. Now, where I would want to come in is where you've got something, but it also has a technical slant or a part of the business that I just don't have staff for. So I'm assuming that you would reach out to small companies like myself or mine, that you would be able to fill in the holes in a particular need for one of these agencies. And so you would do the teaming that you've been talking about.
So Rick,
go ahead.
So Rick, that is one way that we go out and team, where we have a niche or a need that we don't do or don't have the expertise in that geographic area, and we may reach out to look for a teammate. But actually the better way and the most often way we successfully do business with small businesses is we get to know each other. We listen to their capability brief. They listen to this briefing, and we may even give a little bit more in depth with some of the technologies. And then we whiteboard. And then we go, okay, where can your small business and FTI work together? And I'll give you an example. Right now, we don't have any work in the FAA, but maybe a small business has work in the FAA, or they want to have work in the FAA, but they don't have an inroad. Maybe the FAA is using certain GSA schedules they don't have, or the competitive market is driving the price in delivering those services down real low. But they have capability, and they think that the FAA could use their capability. So let's talk. And then we do that co-marketing. So then we go in and we sit together, because maybe they, from a professional contact or whatever, have an inroad to a program manager in the FAA. And they go, hey, Jim Bob, I have been telling you that we as a small business have this capability to really help manage the air traffic flow. And then we've got this company, FTI, that has this metrics analysis capability that we think we can look at and analyze how different times of the day we may want to staff differently, whatever the case may be. So we sit down and we co-market, and we go, okay, and we get this government person in FAA to go, I like what you're saying. How do I get to you guys? And then we go, okay, we can have you put a phase 3 in place, or maybe even use one that's already existing, and we can get going in a matter of weeks to start it up and move it out. So it's much more in the upfront phase and getting to know each other, and then going, where is there an intersection of that small business's capability with our kind of strategic plan and where we're going, and to where it's a win-win for both companies. It'd be much harder for companies to go, hey, call me if you need me. It's much better when we both have skin in the game and we're actively out there marketing government customers together. That's where we've seen the most success. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I've just got one follow-up question.
Sure.
So how do I get to know you? So as a small business, how do I get to have that first conversation so that you can get to know what my capabilities are?
Sure. So happy to, and I've got 9 business development people that work for me, along with over a dozen consultants. So one of the things that I think we do pretty well is we go out and we reach out across lots of government folks, and we're always looking for industry partners. So you could reach me at Shirley, MSHIRLEY, at FTI, Foxtrot Tango India, a minus sign, November Echo Tango.com. So Shirley at FTI.com. Reach out to me. Happy to set up a call where, again, we can talk and see if there is an intersection. And depending on your business area, for example, if it was the Army, I would connect you with my Army lead, Army veteran. His name's Jim Daly. He's awesome. And so I have leads in lots of different areas. So whether you would spend much time with me, or if I get you to the right people that are in your type of business, that's what I try to do as efficiently as possible. But yeah, I'm happy to take those emails, and you'll see at the end of this brief, there's some contact information in terms of another email, a BD email address, and a phone number. That phone number goes to my cell phone. It gets forwarded. So happy to take your call and walk through that. And then the other aspect of today's brief is you may have some questions about the SBIR program. It is not a simple road. So we've been successful, but as I said earlier, we've been doing it for a couple decades, and there's been as many failures as successes along when you're trying to do the SBIR 1s and 2s. And if you'd like to chat about that a little bit, we're always happy to give back, and even get to know, you may be that hardware company that's doing great things in that community, and give you some advice on that. If you're much more of the services, then happy to chat with you about that. There's many that have helped us along the way. We're happy to help others.
So I've got a follow-up question. I'm going to tag team. So has FTI worked with people who have phase 1 or 2 SBIRs and you didn't?
Well, since we've always had them, or at least I've been with FTI for 5 years, so we've always had 1s and 2s, and we've always had phase 3s. But we have worked with companies that have phase 1s and 2s. To answer your question, we have not. Well, no, there's one exception. We have subbed to somebody else that has put their phase 2 in place as a phase 3, and then we have subbed to them. So yes, I guess we have.
So is the terminology then, when we find a client that we think is a suspect for you, they've got something, and they've got a customer that's wanting it, but they can't make it happen. That's what I think I remember you talking about before, correct?
Yes.
So we bring them to you. You're going to look through your library of phase 1 and 2s of SBIRs, or even what you've already got known established as phase 3s, and look through those to see if there's a possibility of a way to be able to go to that customer.
That's correct. We'll look at our teammates' capabilities. We'll look at our contracting solutions and capabilities, and we'll have a pre-meeting with our teammate going in and go, okay, let's strategize about this. And the outcome of the meeting that we would like is that the customer says, yeah, I think this SBIR phase 3 thing is a good idea. I'll get in another slide. We'll talk about the contracting officer or office and how we walk through that. And then ourselves and this teammate then are going forward and putting that work on contract, with both companies having a good work share to make it a profitable situation for both companies to make that happen. And that's exactly what we do over and over all over the country.
So most of your cooperative work, except for with the exception of one, then uh, the other company becomes the subordinate to you, to FTI. I don't know how you say that legally.
Yes, we subcontractor. Yes, that
Okay.
we are the prime contractor with the phase three because we own the intellectual property, and then they are the subcontractor. And that too gets into why we even try to talk to the government about not making it a small business set aside. Because if we do that, then our partners, our group of partners, and even through kind of like-sized companies that have to do 51% if they make it a small business set aside. If they don't, then we can manage that work share much better than like a 8A or ANC, where that's a hardcore kind of 51% for the prime and 49% for kind of the rest of the teaming partners. We're able to be more flexible with that. But
Gotcha.
we'll respond with however the government wants to do that.
So basically, the SBIR phase three becomes the designation to where you can fast track uh, and put whatever money is sitting there where they can put money into this from the customer's perspective.
Absolutely correct. And then what I did is put this slide up where the first time people hear about SBIR phase three contracting, it's brand new, right? It's a new paradigm. And so a lot of times it sounds, for one, too good to be true. That's why the agencies put out their SBIR phase three guide for program managers and contracting officers. But what we've done is just broke it down into 7 steps that make it a lot simpler. Starts off with that discussion with the government team in terms of what problem are they trying to solve. And then we're able to talk about the program and also the scope of work and how our technologies may help them. Our teammates can be a part of that discussion right up front. And again, they may be there at step 1 because they may be doing those introductions. And then we talk about, hey, is there a phase 3 already in place? Maybe that's the easy button. Let's go make it happen now. Or, do we put a new one in place because the customer wants to control their own destiny and not ask Mother May I to another agency? And then step 4 is a pretty big deal, that they either identify a contracting office or officer inside their organization, or we can bring in an outside contracting organization like GSA. We do both all the time. We're happy to teach contracting people that haven't been exposed to SBIR phase 3s how to do them within their organization. And then we have some GSA resources that they've done many phase 3s with us. And then step 5 is probably one of the biggest differences between phase 3s and non-phase 3s. And that is, we can trade documents with the government, our teaming partners, and we can help them draft the performance work statement because we own the intellectual property, because sole source contracting, alpha contracting is allowed. We're able to work through those things. And that's one of the main things that accelerates the whole acquisition process, is we talk about the topics that we have, we show how they can fit with the objectives, and then it moves forward. And that's like the unit to be weeks and months and not years. And then really step 6 is throughout all steps. Step 6 is building that group of consultants, companies, FFRDCs, and universities that need to come together to solve the problem. And then, it's award the contract or use a current contract, put the funds on and go. So we put this together so that it's not some mystery. It's not something that's way outside of the normal acquisition paradigm. Any questions on
that? Well, I have a follow-up question.
Sure.
So if I'm a small business and I'm reading through the RFIs or the sources soughts, and bearing in mind that a lot of these agencies are hardwired into doing competitive procurements, And I read one of these and I see where, hey, there's, probably 30% of this is exactly what I do. How often have you had someone come to you and they've seen an RFI or sources saw it, which means it's before they've really decided how they're going to do it, and then been able to team with you, and you've been able to go to the agency and have this turned into a direct award through a phase 3 versus it going full circle through the competitive route?
Well, that's a great question. So we respond to RFIs and we answer their questions as asked, but then we add a section to it describing how actually they can do this acquisition as a phase 3. And we've done that with teammates and without teammates in terms of responding. And I'll say it's twofold. There's the possibility of turning that acquisition into a phase 3, but there's also a hugely valuable thing. And that is that contract specialist, that buyer, and that contracting officer have an opportunity to get educated on something they didn't even know existed. So as they are basically reading every response that said, my company can do it, my company can do it faster, cheaper, better, they get to this one and says, yeah, we can do it, but we think you can do it a lot faster and more efficient if you use the SBIR phase 3s, and then you get these technologies for free. In addition to what's in your response, we can bring the all-star team. You're going to have 8 companies that are going to respond, and you're going to like a little bit of everything that they said. Wouldn't you like to have all of them? How about you do it on a phase 3, and we could, cherry pick the companies that you like the capabilities on. So we're doing more and more of those kind of responses. I can't say that many have turned, but that's something we've only done over about the last year. But I have seen relationships form to where when they get their next thing that they're doing, and because maybe even with the RFI, maybe behind the scenes, they've kind of decided what it's going to be, and politically they are supposed to use this vehicle and those kind of things. But for their other hard problems that are stacking up on their desk, we pride ourselves in doing the government's hardest problems, not the easiest. So that thing that needs some services and needs some travel and needs some materials and needs some hardware, and oh, by the way, needs to lease a facility. Wow, that's not a simple acquisition. How about you take that really hard one and make it a phase 3? And we can do with our teammates everything I just said. Great question.
Thank you.
So who judges whether or not who oversees whether or not the interpretation of the phase 1 and 2 can become a phase 3?
So that's in the eyes of the contracting officer. So again, it gets back to derives from, extends, or completes. Sections written purposely very, very broad to try to get these technologies out into the world. We've invested as taxpayers billions of dollars of phase 1s and 2s over the years. And we want those things to get used out there to help our industry, both government and non-government, do good things. And so it's really in the eye of the contracting officer. Program managers, as you might imagine, go, did you say speed? Did you say weeks and months? Great, let's get it done. So it's really in the eyes of the contracting officers that you go, okay, are the things that the SBIR company, be it FTI or another one, does it make sense that this scope of work can be done? Because there's a lot of adjacent kind of services. It's not just everybody on our contract is not running one of our tools, but they may be supporting the data. They may be supporting the program management, the engineering, the subject matter experts. So it's really in the eyes of the contracting officer. And again, that's why the Navy, the Air Force, others have really good guides. And if people on this call go out, look at the SBA, they'll have their those guides. And I'm a retired Air Force guy, but I have to admit that the Navy has probably the best guide, and they just refreshed it in the last 12 months. And I will say that the Air Force was smart enough to copy it, and they added some other cool stuff. But the frequently asked questions, so there's only about 3 or 4 pages of frequently asked questions, and it's worth companies' time to read it, because you could tell by the questions that the program manager or contracting officer that wrote the question thought this was too good to be true. And they just didn't believe that it was possible. Well, their answers say not only is it true, but we as a service are encouraging you to do SBIR phase 3s. And this is how you do it. You don't have to write a JNA, but if you do write one, say these words because it's a SBIR phase 3. Little things like that are in those guides. And again, the Navy, the Air Force, those frequently asked questions will really up the level of knowledge for companies out there looking at how to do this.